Celeste Louw. She's with the Tears Foundation. Celeste, it's good to talk to you, and it really is. It is. Some will say closure for the family, but this is cold comfort for a family that's had to deal with the loss of a child in such a violent way.
100%. Thank you so much for having me. I think that it's closure in the sense that the judicial process is finished, but I think there's a long journey to healing and reclaiming lives involved there.
The judge had some interesting things to say about Phethe Simiao, the rapist and murder of the 6-year-old girl. We know that her mother gave a victim impact statement on what would have been Amantle Samane's 7th birthday just a couple of weeks ago. The judge said something interesting. He said there's a chasm, he said, between regret and remorse. I suppose on the one hand, regret is perhaps regret for yourself and what's to come for you versus remorse, whether you really are sorry about what you've done.
Yes. And I think the thing is we are very focused on punishment and we are very focused on justice. But are we focusing on preventing these problems? And are we focused on understanding how we get into these places where we have such violent crime and where such terrible things happen? And I think the answers maybe don't lie with justice or punishment.
What do you mean by that, Celeste?
So what I'm trying to say is that I think the answers lie in healing our country, in healing broken families, in healing the social inequalities that we have, in application of our laws, in having better responses to GBV in the first place. Because once we get to a point where a child has been killed, we've already lost the battle.
Is it surprising for you that Phethe Simiao is a father, is a married father of a child that is just over a year old?
I wish I could say that it does surprise me, but unfortunately with the kind of cases we see every day, it actually doesn't surprise me. So I think we have deep-seated, deep-rooted problems in our country that need, really to be addressed in ways that are practically implementable and that show success. And clearly we are losing the war if this is what we're seeing.
There will be several unanswered questions now, right? There are certain assumptions, certain things that the court has had to decide based on the information before it. But because Phethe Simiao didn't take to the stand, there are a lot of unanswered questions for the family. Look, I don't know if the family actually wants to know the answers to these questions, but the judge says, there are questions about how long the victim was kept as hostage, how long after her rape did he decide to kill her?
Yes. And the thing is, in most cases, survivors and victims' families don't get those answers because unless there's a long journey to a reconciliatory type outcome, where there's some sort of acknowledgement of guilt and there's some sort of reconciliation happening. Generally speaking, the people who are convicted are not going to give you those answers and maybe don't even see the need for them to give those answers. So unfortunately, when you've got to the level of this kind of crime, the question is, he probably did not take the stand because he didn't want to answer all of those questions.
Celeste, in your experience, a family that has gone through the horror of losing a child in this way, I mean, losing a loved one on any given day is awful. The grief is awful, the loss is very difficult to live with, but losing a loved one, a child, a baby essentially, she was 6 years old at the time, under these kinds of circumstances, is it possible to move forward with your life?
So I think that we need to understand this. There's always hope for healing, but it's about how you go about that and how long it takes. So for me, it's a terrible thing to lose someone to that kind of violence. It's a terrible thing to be violated. And we see all of these horrible, we hear them, right? We hear these stories and we know of them because we see these survivors every day, and I'm a survivor myself. There's always hope for healing, but it takes guidance, it takes patience, it takes resilience. There's a lot of work involved in getting to healing. So is there hope for healing? Yes. Does that mean they will be healed? No. Does it mean they'll pick up their lives and find a new way forward? And hopefully a way that will bring peace and joy and reconciliation inside of their community? That is what we can hope for. But those things don't come from the justice process or from correctional services process. Those are things that come from inside families and inside communities.
No, absolutely. Hopefully as well, we have government initiatives, interventions from, say, social development that can do these home visits with families that have been through this kind of trauma, particularly in a setting where perhaps seeing a grief counselor or going for therapy isn't an option because of certain economic realities for a family.
Unfortunately, as much as I think there is services available, or there are services available, our infrastructure is broken, and the funding towards our infrastructure is broken. And you see, DSD can do so much, but NGOs are closing at an alarming rate because there's a lot of political voice, and there's a lot of voice coming from government. But our question is there political will? Because on the ground, we're not seeing it. Many, many communities are going without any services whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when someone has died and the memorial service is held, the funeral is held, and then everyone sort of goes away. Everyone goes back to their lives. And so the grieving family is then still left in the midst of this grief. It's the same with a case like this on some level. There's a lot of media interest. We're going to court every so often. The case is in the news. But now there's been a sentence. What now for the family?
Yes. Yes, what now? Because now they get to pick up the pieces. And a lot of the time people think that it's like this. Oh, well, there's justice. There's been a sentence. It's over. Now you must be okay. Well, you're never going to be okay with the fact that your child was raped and murdered. It's never going to just be okay. There's a lot that goes into that, into healing from that. And it takes courage, and like I said, and it takes services and commitment and support from communities. But I think there's a lot of focus on, okay, so now we're sentencing people. And is that actually the solution? Because what about the survivors? And what about the victims in a lot of cases who are not getting any kind of services? And justice takes a long time as well, I must say. So although we see these high-profile cases, I will tell you that we see cases every day that never make the news.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the judge also mentioned that when he talked about the fact that this happened. The child was abducted, body was found in October last year. It's been just over 10 months now since we've gotten to the point of a sentencing in this case. And we know of many, many, many other cases where it might not even get to this stage of a trial.
And in some cases, it'll take 8 years to get through court. The system is really, really slow. And a lot of times, like for instance, in rape cases, it can take you 3 years to get your DNA results from your rape kit back. And in that time, survivors are meant to sit and wait for justice to be over before they go for healing. I'll tell you that. So most times you're told, don't go for therapy until you've testified. But what happens when it takes 8 years to get into a court to testify? So your life has to sit on hold and you have to sit in pain until you testify, because survivors are expected to perform their pain on the stand, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking thing, and the victims and the families who are left behind are the ones who are left to pick up the pieces. Celeste Louw is with the Tears Foundation. Celeste, thanks very much for your time.